first flight took place in August 1949. Like with Mi-1, not everything went smooth. A catastrophe occurred in which test pilot Mikhail Gurov died. It was the third victim among helicopter test pilots. Helicopters were not easy. Passing tests on ships, Ka-10 did not suit the Navy command. Kamov tried to develop an improved version of the same helicopter. But it was too early to speak of any helicopter's practical application. The main point was that the first machines brought indispensable experience. In the meantime, a helicopter boom burst out in the USA. It was based on Sikorsky's machine's success. The interest of many designers and businessmen was such that by the end of the 40s, there were over 300 helicopter-producing companies in the country. Machines were of different layout and size. This resembled the overall fancy for airplanes of the beginning of the century. Of course, not everyone managed to leave its name in the helicopter development history. Successful were such companies as Bell and Hiller, which following Sikorsky picked up the classical single-rotor layout. For over 20 years, the light Bell 47 and Hiller 360 were the best in their class. In the more heavier class, Sikorsky remained authority number one, but there were others as well. Frank Pisetsky, an immigrant from the Russian Empire, managed to develop the world's first operational twin-rotor side-by-side layout helicopter. Many designers tried to use the same layout later on. Tests revealed typical problems relating to the rotor's harmful mutual impact. This limited piloting characteristics a minor charge for the obvious advantages: large payload and voluminous fuselage. Not all of the designers who had chosen the side-by-side layout managed to repeat Pisetsky's success. The Charles Kamens Syncropter was also put into production. Although the layout had a lot of problems, the helicopter had an obvious advantage. It was compact and very suitable for ship basing. Gradually, American military commanders obtained confidence in helicopters. More and more applications for the rotor wing machines were discovered. The number of civil orders were growing gradually as well. The Korean War became a radical test for the American helicopters of the first generation. It was a kind of a huge test range where the Cold War enemies tested their new weapons. Helicopters became one of the Korean War discoveries. They were used for reconnaissance, artillery spotting, communication, unit supply, withdrawal of wounded, rescue of the shot-down pilots. What was most important, helicopters proved to be an efficient improvement of the ground forces' mobility. As one general said, helicopters turned combined arms into 3D operations. The Army, suspiciously looking at helicopters at the beginning, now quickly turned into their rampant supporters. Such success of the rotor-winged equipment was not left unnoticed in the Soviet Union. In the end of September 1951, the leading Soviet aircraft designers were called to Kremlin. It was a regular conference, but with a surprising agenda: elimination of the gap in the helicopter's production. The change of attitude toward the rotor wing machines was caused by the Korean War. Stalin considered further absence of helicopters in the armed forces dangerous for the country's defense capacity. Heads of the country's leading design bureaus were invited to the historic conference. Tupolev and Ilyushin, referring to huge workload, managed to escape getting assignments for the unusual aircraft. Mil offered the project of a transport helicopter to carry 12 soldiers. Kamov proposed a helicopter with a twice as much payload. Stalin ordered helicopters to be built within 1 year. When Kamov argued the timing as unrealistic, the project was passed over to Yakovlev. The latter knew well that the timing was unrealistic, but being more experienced in the Kremlin relationships, he did not dare objecting. Since that time, helicopters obtained green light in the USSR. Helicopter programs stood at the same level of importance as the nuclear and rocket projects. Right after the conference, the dubious situation with Mi-1 cleared up. It was put into mass production with more and more factories attached. A total of 2,700 Mi-1 were built. Mi-1 operations laid the basis for the Soviet rotor wing aviation. This helicopter was used not only in the army units, but in the air schools and air clubs. There was an attempt to equip Mi-1 with anti-tank missile. This helicopter was utilized in the civil aviation as well. You can see vineyards of the Crimea. This is Mi-1, an air rover of wide recognition. This time it is an agricultural machine. At a low speed, this minor worker flies over the mountain slopes, diligently sprinkling vineyards with chemicals.
Это позволяет с особой тщательностью опрыскивать виноградники химикатами.
Fishermen could trace whales with the help of helicopters. Flight characteristics of this machine allowed to set 27 world records. In the course of its operation, Mi-1 was continuously modernized. New versions brought new capabilities. Helicopters did not escape attention of the cinema makers. In the feature film The Striped Journey, Mi-1 carried a lion tamer to a vessel occupied by wild cats. Where is the tiger? I will tame it. I'm not a coward, but I'm afraid. You are no tiger, you are a swine. Today we don't see anything unusual in the helicopter shown on the screen, while at that time it was a real curiosity. Things were down the road, and when the country's leaders ordered a new, much heavier machine, the Mills team got to work. In autumn 1951, the Design Bureau obtained an important production basis at its disposal, the factory in Sokolniki. In autumn 1952, 9 months after the Kremlin conference, Mi-4 took off, piloted by test pilot Vsevolod Vinitsky. The machine's characteristics were even higher than those prescribed in the state assignment. Without completing the tests, the helicopter was put into mass production. These machines are already familiar to the audience. The first helicopter group is led by Colonel Yarofeevsky. Such machines were compared with dragonflies. It must be a rather primitive comparison. The helicopter cabin is spacious enough to accommodate people and different cargoes. A car driver is relaxed, admiring the Moscow landscape.